Peace, peace. It's your boy Mayhem once again, and I'm back with another On This Day in Black History. Today, February 27th, 1735, the probable date of Prince Hall's birth. Prince Hall, Revolutionary War veteran and founder of African Masonic lodges. Prince Hall, one of Boston's most prominent citizens during the Revolutionary period, was the founder of the African Lodge of the Honorable Society of Free and Accepted Masons of Boston, the world's first lodge of Black Freemasonry, and the first society in American history devoted to social, political, and economic improvement. He was born in 1735 and was the slave of William Hall of Boston. His son Primus was born in 1756 to Delia, a servant in another household. In 1762, at the age of 27, Hall joined the Congregational Church and soon after married an enslaved woman named Sarah Ritchie. 8 years later, after Sarah's death, he married Flora Gibbs of Gloucester. Prince Hall died in 1807 at the age of 72. A year later, his lodge honored him by changing its name to Prince Hall Grand Lodge. February 27th, 1833. On this day in 1833, Mariah W. Stewart delivered one of the 4 speeches which confirmed her place in history as the first American-born woman to give public lectures. Stewart's lectures focused on encouraging African Americans to attain education, political rights, and public recognition for their achievements. Her speech on this day, delivered at the African Masonic Hall in Boston, Massachusetts, was titled "On Africa, Rights and Liberty." African rights and liberty is a subject that ought to fire the breast of every free man of color in these United States and excite in his bosom a lively, deep, decided, and heartfelt interest. When I cast my eyes on the long list of illustrious names that are enrolled on the bright annals of fame amongst the whites, I turn my eyes within and ask my thoughts, where are the names of our illustrious ones? It must certainly have been for the want of energy on the part of the free people of color that they have been long willing to bear the yoke of oppression. It must have been the want of ambition and force that has given the whites occasion to say that our natural abilities are not as good and our capacities by nature inferior to theirs. They boldly assert that did we possess a natural independence of soul and feel a love for liberty within our breasts, some one of our sable race long before this would have testified it, notwithstanding the disadvantages under which we labor. We have made ourselves appear altogether unqualified to speak in our own defense, and are therefore looked upon as objects of pity and commiseration. We have been imposed upon, insulted, and derided on every side, and now, if we complain, it is considered as the height of impertinence. We have suffered ourselves to be considered as dastards, cowards, mean, faint-hearted wretches, and on this account, not because of our complexion, many despise us and will gladly spurn us from their presence. These things have fired my soul with a holy indignation and compelled me thus to come forward and endeavor to turn their attention to knowledge and improvement. For knowledge is power. I would ask, it is blindness of mind or stupidity of soul or the want of education that has caused our men who are 60 or 70 years of age never to let their voices be heard nor their hands be raised in behalf of their color. 67 years later in Boston on this same day, African-American teacher and poet Angelina Weld Grimke was born. Grimke was a descendant of the famous white abolitionists and feminist sisters Angelina and Sarah Grimke. February 27th, 1844, Independence Day for Dominican Republic. The Spanish colony of Santo Domingo, now the Dominican Republic, would be the target of aggression for its Hispaniola neighbor, French-ruled Saint Dominique, now Haiti, in the early 19th century, culminating in a 22-year occupation which would have long-term consequences for both nations. Haitian aggression began in late 1800 when Toussaint Louverture The general-in-chief of Saint Dominique invaded Santo Domingo in order to both expand his sphere of control and capture the port of Santo Domingo. L'Ouverture's troops crossed the border and easily captured and occupied the city of Santo Domingo for the entirety of 1801. L'Ouverture did not end slavery in the colony despite abolition being one of his stated goals. In early 1802, L'Ouverture ended the occupation when he was forced to turn his attention back to the western third of the island to confront a newly arrived French military exposition. In 1805, Jean-Jacques Dessalines was named L'Ouverture's successor. In 1809, Santo Domingo was returned to Spanish control. In 1822, Haitian President Jean-Pierre Boyer invaded Santo Domingo for the third time with the intent of unifying the island. The subsequent 22-year occupation would result not only in the economic and cultural deterioration of Santo Domingo, but also in a resentment of Haiti by the Dominicans. Agriculture in Santo Domingo was for the most part reduced to subsistence level and exports dramatically declined. The immigration of Dominican landowners led to the redistribution of their property to Haitian officials, and the practice of Haitian soldiers commandeering supplies from the countryside only made the situation worse. Culturally, the Haitians took steps to limit the Catholic Church's influence. They confiscated church property, deported the foreign clergy, and severed most remaining ties to Rome. To the pious Catholics who made up the majority of Dominicans, these practices were seen as a great insult and only deepened the hatred for the Haitians. February 27th, 1860. Abraham Lincoln, a presidential candidate who had yet to win the Republican nomination, accepted an invitation to speak to the Young Men's Republican Union at Cooper Union Hall before a capacity crowd of 1,500. Lincoln used the occasion to outline his views on slavery in the territories, noting that his research has shown that 21 of the 39 signers of the Constitution believe slavery should not be allowed in the territories, attempting to undercut the opposition charge that the Republican position on that question was out of the political mainstream. He then urged fellow Republicans not to capitulate to Southern demands to recognize slavery as acceptable, but to continually oppose the institution, or as he said, to stand by our duty fearlessly and effectively. February 27th, 1869. Congress adopts the 15th constitutional amendment, making it illegal for the U.S. or any single government to deny or abridge the right to vote on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. 1869. John W. Menard spoke in Congress in defense of his claim to a contested seat in Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District. Congress decided against both claimants. Congressman James A. Garfield of the examining committee said it was too early to admit a Negro to the U.S. Congress. Menard was the first black male to make a speech in Congress. February 27th, 1872. Charlotte Ray graduates from Howard Law School. Charlotte Ray was the first African American lawyer in the U.S. February 27th, 1883. Walter B. Purvis patented a hand stamp. February 27th, 1897. Marianne Anderson, renowned contralto and one of the most celebrated singers of the 20th century, was born on February 27, 1897 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. February 27, 1917. James A. Roston. Lieutenant James A. Roston was a key organizer for the African American labor movement in Seattle in the early part of the 20th century. He was born in New Haven, Connecticut in 1864. Ralston was commissioned from the District of Columbia as a first lieutenant to the 10th U.S. Volunteer Infantry, 10th Immunes, Company K during the Spanish-American War, 1898 through 1899. The regiment never served outside the United States. After the war, he enlisted a private in the 24th Infantry and served in the Philippines, 1899 to 1902, rising to the rank of corporal. While there, he distinguished himself in the field when, as chief of scouts, he helped capture high-ranking rebel officers. After his service ended in 1902, Ralston settled in Brooklyn, New York, where he sold real estate, lectured about the Philippines and Africa, and served as chairman and president of the 1903 Commercial American Negro Convention, a group whose goal was to tax African Americans and use the revenue to establish black-owned businesses. He also served as exalted ruler of Brooklyn Elks Lodge number 32. Ralston moved to Seattle after a year as a Pullman porter in Spokane, Washington, and soon established himself as a realtor for the many African Americans that were moving to the area during the shipbuilding boom of the early 1900s. During the Longshoremen's Strike of 1916, he helped recruit 400 African American strike breakers. Ralston established and became president of the Colored Marine Employees Benevolent Protective Association of the Pacific, the first African American labor organization in the Pacific Northwest to organize black workers and erase the false impression that the colored man didn't believe in organization. The strike was marked by racial tensions and conflict with white workers attacking blacks when they retaliated in kind. On February 27, 1917, the Central Labor Council, by a practically unanimous vote, decided to include Negroes and whites in labor. When the United States entered World War I in April, the strike was ended by government fiat and the waterfront was integrated. Lieutenant Ralston was also a member of the local NAACP and the King County Colored Republican Club. He died in Seattle on May 3, 1924. 1942. Journalist Charlayne Hunter was born this day in Due West, South Carolina. Alberta Charlayne Hunter Gout is an American civil rights activist, journalist, and former foreign correspondent for the National Public Radio, CNN, and the Public Broadcasting Service. Charlayne Hunter and Hamilton Holmes were the first African American students to attend the University of Georgia. February 27th. 1956, Dewey, aka Rajo Jack DeSoto Gadsden, died in California on February 27, 1956 from heart failure suffered while on Highway 395 near Inyokern. Dewey Gadsden, better known as Rajo Jack or his pseudonym Jack DeSoto, was an American race car driver. He is known as one of the first African American racers in America. He won races up and down the west coast of the United States in stock cars, midgets, big cars, and motorcycles. February 27th, 1957, Sherry D. Harris was the first out black lesbian elected to public office in 1991 in the United States. This also gave her the distinction of being the first African American woman on the Seattle City Council in Washington State. Harris was born on February 27, 1957 in Newark, New Jersey, to a single mom, Dorothy Harris, an only child. She grew up in the community's ghetto. She recalled witnessing the 1967 riots there. Dorothy Harris became her daughter's role model with her emphasis on contributing to society and active community involvement. Harris received a Bachelor's of Science degree in Human Factors Engineering, ergonomic engineering, from the New Jersey Institute of Technology in 1978. She moved to Seattle shortly thereafter. As an engineer, she worked for Pacific Northwest Bell Telephone Company and Boeing. She engaged extensively in neighborhood activism through such organizations as Maple Leaf Community Club, Northwest Women's Law Center, Association of Lesbian Professionals of Seattle, and Greater Seattle Business Association. She was appointed to 5 city boards and commissions in the 1980s. In 1991, Harris ran for political office in Seattle. She became the first candidate endorsed by the newly founded Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund, a national organization supporting LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer persons in politics. By a 70% majority, Harris defeated the 24-year incumbent, Sam Smith, who had been the first African-American elected to the Seattle City Council. She served as an at-large city council member from 1992 to 1995. Harris chaired the council's Housing, Health, Human Services and Education Committee and served on the Transportation and Utilities Committees. She sponsored or co-sponsored several gay-positive initiatives. She also helped to raise over $1 million to fight anti-gay ordinances in the state. Growing up in Newark with its poverty and lack of investment spurred her to promote downtown Seattle projects like the expansion of the Washington State Convention and Trade Center. In 1994, she and fellow council member Jade Noland successfully added an amendment to the Women and Minority Business Enterprise Ordinance to ensure a certain percentage of city contracts for women and minorities, along with encouraging the city's utilization of their businesses. She co-founded and chaired the Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual Caucus National League of Cities. Sherry Harris lost her re-election bid in 1995. She attempted a political comeback 2 years later, but did not win the general election. Since then, Harris has focused on a holistic vision of people, politics, and society. In 2010, Harris published her book, Changing the World from the Inside Out: Politics for the New Millennium. She founded her own company in Seattle, Spirit, Mind, Body Educational Resources. She lectures and conducts workshops locally, nationally, and internationally. February 27th, 1964. Anna Julia Cooper. Anna Julia Heyman, born August 10th, 1858 in Raleigh, North Carolina, died February 27th, 1964 in Washington, D.C. American educator and writer whose book, A Voice from the South by a Black Woman of the South, became a classic African-American feminist text. Cooper was the daughter of a slave woman and her white slaveholder, or his brother. In 1868, she enrolled in the newly established St. Augustine's Normal School and Collegiate Institute, now St. Augustine's University, a school for freed slaves. She quickly distinguished herself as an excellent student, and in addition to her studies, she began teaching mathematics part-time at age 10. While enrolled at St. Augustine, she had a feminist awakening when she realized that her male classmates were encouraged to study a more rigorous curriculum than were the female students. After that early realization, she spent the rest of her life advocating for the education of Black women. In 1877, Anna married her classmate, George Cooper, who died 2 years later. After her husband's death, Cooper enrolled in Oberlin College in Ohio, shout out to Ohio, graduated in 1884 with a BS in mathematics and receiving a master's degree in mathematics in 1888. In 1887, she became a faculty member at the M Street High School, established in 1870 as a preparatory high school for Negro youth in Washington, D.C. There she taught mathematics, science, and later Latin. During the 1890s, Cooper became involved in the Black Women's Club movement. Women's club members were generally educated middle-class women who believed that it is their duty to help less fortunate African Americans. During that time, Cooper became a popular public speaker. She addressed a wide variety of groups, including the National Conference of Colored Women in 1895 and the first Pan-African Conference in 1900. In 1902, Cooper was named principal of the M Street High School. As principal, she enhanced the academic reputation of the school, and under her tenure, several M Street graduates were admitted to Ivy League schools. Cooper's controversial emphasis on college preparatory courses irked critics, such as Booker T. Washington, who favored vocational education for blacks. Using trumped-up charges, the District of Columbia Board of Education refused to renew her contract for the 1905-06 school year. Undaunted, Cooper continued her career as an educator, teaching for 4 years at Lincoln University, a historically black college in Jefferson City, Missouri. In 1910, she was rehired as a teacher at M Street, renamed Dunbar High School after 1916, where she stayed until 1930. In 1911, Cooper began studying part-time for a doctoral degree. In 1925, at age 67, she received a doctorate from the Sorbonne in Paris, having written her dissertation on slavery. Written in French, it was published in English as Slavery and the French Revolutionists, 1788 to 1805. In addition to her scholarly activities, Cooper reared 2 foster children and 5 adoptive children on a teacher's salary. From 1930 to 1941, she served as president of Frelinghuysen University for working adults in Washington, D.C. She died in her sleep at age 105. Maximus, shut the hell up out there. February 27th, 1988, Debbie Thomas becomes the first African American to win a medal, bronze, at the Winter Olympic Games. February 27th, 2013, Yityish Titi Aynaw was crowned Miss Israel on February 27, 2013. She made history when she became the first Miss Israel of African ancestry. Born in Gondar Province, Ethiopia, Aynaw arrived in Israel in March 2003, along with her older brother and grandparents at the age of 12 after the death of her mother in 2002. Her father died when she was 2 years old. Aynaw lived in the hardscrabble immigrant town of Netanya. Despite having no knowledge of spoken or written Hebrew, she was transported to a Hebrew boarding school in Haifa that catered to newly arrived immigrants. Over time, her competency in Hebrew steadily increased, and she eventually became fluent in Yiddish as well. Aynaw was a standout student in high school who distinguished herself from the outset. She was student council president, excelled in track and field, and won first place in a national film competition that was loosely based on her own life experiences. After graduating from high school, Aynaw, like all school graduates, male and female, served in the Israeli Defense Forces. She was a lieutenant in the military police corps of the Israeli Defense Forces and served as a military police commander responsible for fellow soldiers. In this position, she instructed soldiers how to fire weapons, perform security checks at checkpoints, and detect and detonate bombs. Aynaw remained connected to her Ethiopian heritage even as she embraced her new Israeli national identity. She constantly promoted the mores and customs of her native land. In high school, she occasionally brought Ethiopian foods and wore clothing reflecting her nation of origin. It was her history of ethnic and nationalistic pride that made Aynaw the target of criticism for fellow Ethiopian immigrants who were embarrassed by her actions and were more interested in assimilating into Israeli culture. Aynaw dismissed these critics by asserting that she could recall her ethnic heritage in an increasingly multi-ethnic Israel while representing all Israelis during her reign. She stated, "Being Miss Israel is a responsibility that I take seriously." While her win was seen as a significant breakthrough in Israeli ethnic relations, her victory was not without its critics. Israeli social media witnessed a surge of negative and racially bigoted comments following her selection. Some detractors called her the Tofi Queen, as opposed to Yafi, the Hebrew term used for beauty queen. Her supporters have accused some in the Israeli media of attempting to alter her physical features in magazines in an effort to make her look less dark and European in her features. Aynaw was invited to the White House by President Barack Obama to attend a state dinner with Israeli President Shimon Peres. President Obama's admiration for the current title holder was readily apparent when he referred to her as a role model for people around the world. That is today, February 27th, in Black History. Make sure you like and subscribe. Check out the other videos I've done up until this point, and stay tuned for more. Happy Black History Month. Peace.